Uh, so today topic given to me is stars, myths, and scientific gaze. This topic is close to my heart. I love watching stars. I love gathering how myths about stars are understood by different cultures and scientific gaze. I truly believe that this is something every citizen of this world should have. So let's begin with stars. In the night sky, we see a lot of stars. Not from big cities. In big cities like Guwahati, you will see only 20-30 stars at night because there is too much light pollution. If you go outside where there is not much light pollution, you will see few thousand stars over the course of night. And all cultures from all over the world, they looked at the stars, used them for two purposes in the beginning. One was finding directions. Second purpose was calendars, to measure how many days, how many months. We know that initially people thought month is one cycle of phases of moon. So you start from full moon and go to the next full moon, or you start from new moon and go to the next new moon. That is about 1 month. Then some people also realize that sun is also following a cycle that is creating seasons. That is how year got defined. Now, this is kind of common for many cultures that moon takes, because everybody sees the same phase of moon. Month is about 30 days long. Cycle of seasons about 365 days long. This is common to all cultures. But the stories behind it, they differ from culture to culture. To remember where the moon is, to remember where sun is, everybody started making some shapes in the sky. Okay, these three stars I want to remember. Let's make some shape of this and give it some name. Or this 5-6 stars, let's give some name to that. Now here it gets interesting. The same 7 stars, what we call as the Big Dipper, or Ursa Major, or Saptarshi, same 7 stars. But depending on which culture you're talking about, so the shape differs. In Sanskrit-based books, we call them Saptarshi, 7 series. If you talk to the tribals in central India, it's a old woman's squat and 3 thief. If you talk to Chinese, then it's a chariot. If you talk to the Western culture, it's a part of Big Bear, or some people call it Big Dipper. Now, why this happens? Because the shapes are part of our imagination. We give them names as per what we think is relevant for us. In India, we don't see bears that often, so nobody will think of bear in the sky. Now, if you go and talk to different tribes in this region, they will obviously have similar stories. Not just about Big Dipper, about what we call as Orion, what we call as Pleiades, what we call as Milky Way. And these stories also reveal a lot of things. For example, I already mentioned that the hill tribes in central India, they say that this is an old woman's squat, and then there are 3 thieves. Now, they add one part to the story. They say, if that old lady sleeps, thieves will steal the pot. So, old lady should never sleep. Now, some people will say, oh, this is something, some stupid story. Okay? Forget about story, let's just focus on star theory. But the stories are also interesting. Why it is interesting? Because that when they say the old lady should never sleep, which it indirectly they are telling us that in there, when they made this story, this first four stars of Saptarshi or Big Dipper, they were never setting from the location where they were located. That tells us where they were when the story was made. Similarly, you can understand a lot about history of those cultural groups as per the stories which they tell you. So there is astronomy, there is a modern astronomy, but there is also a lot of astronomy in the cultural practices. We will not rule that out. But at the same time, we should also accept that there is a lot of nonsense which gets peddled in name of astronomy. People use a lot of scientific looking words to talk about complete nonsense. They talk about energy passing through your body, planet giving some energy. People talk about birth charts. I'll come to birth charts separately. So all these, just because somebody is using scientific words, that doesn't mean it is science. So we should learn to distinguish between what is science, what appears to be unscientific but may have some historically some ideas, some valid ideas behind it, and what appears scientific but actually is unscientific. The three different categories. Now I mentioned that people spoke about people realized that one month is decided by phases of moon. Every day you see different shape of moon. For 15 days it keeps increasing. For the next 15 days it keeps decreasing. Now, depending on what kind of activities different groups were doing, the calendars differed. How? There were few cultures who had importance for number of days between two events. So suppose if you are doing travel, lot of travel, trading, going from one place to other, then you have to keep track. Oh, 4 days I walked in this direction, 4 days I traveled by boat in this direction, then I have to change direction. So keeping count of days is important. Year does not matter. Since they are always traveling, they don't have to keep track of seasons. So their calendars only worried about phases of moon, but they did not care about sun. Today we know them as lunar calendars. So in those calendars, purely lunar calendars, after 12 months of 12 cycles of moon, the new year starts. Now 12 exact cycles of moon together account for 354 days. Not 365, 354 days. So if you look at, for example, the Islamic calendar, which is still used, Islamic calendar, if you check or just go home, open the dates of Eid in different years, you will see that date of Eid shifts by about 10 to 11 days every year. Why? Because Islamic calendar is a lunar calendar. After 12 months are done, 354 days are done, new year starts. You don't have to wait till end of cycle of season. On the other hand, there were some people who did not care about phases of moon at all. They're more different, like agricultural societies. They're more dependent on cycle of season. They have to know exactly when the summer is starting. Now I have to do the farming. In winter, I have to do the farming. That is more important. So for them, 365 days is 1 year is more important than moon. So for example, if you look at the calendar which is followed in Bengal, or you start New Year on 14th April, 14th April, it goes on for 65 days. It does not matter on 14th April what phase of moon it is. It may be full moon, it may be new moon, it may be some other day. Doesn't matter. So those are solar calendars. And then there are some calendars which are a mix of the two. So like they would like to use moon to track months, but they would also like to use sun to track years. And then the problem starts. Because 12 months is 354 days, and then after 11 days the year will end. So every year you will get offset of about 11 days. How to fix this? That is why some people came up with the idea that after every few years, you add one extra month. So Indians, they suggested that you should add total 7 extra months in a cycle of 19 years. And what is called as Adhik Mas. Later on, what happened? Immediately, people who wanted to make commercial use of it said Adhik Mas is either too auspicious or too inauspicious. Either way, you have to do special rituals, and you have to all the priests started earning money with that. But the idea of Adhik Mas is very simple. Because your 12 months don't match with 1 year, you have to have some extra months every 2 years, 3 years, and so on. Similarly, people who were keeping track of moon, where moon is every day, and what shape moon has, they had to find position of moon in the sky, and they realized that in about 27 days, moon completes one full circle in the sky. The phase cycle is 30 days, 29 and a half actually, but to complete one full circle around the sky, moon takes 27 days. So they divided the path of moon in 27 parts and said, okay, today the moon is with this star, today the moon is, next day the moon is with that star, next the moon is with that star. What we call them as the 27 nakshatras. We have this Ashwini, Bharani, Kritika, Rohini, Mriga, Adra, so we can count 27 names. If you look at the astronomical verses from Vedas, you will see these 27 names. At that time, actually, they counted as 28. Now we take it as 27. But what they don't have is more interesting. These astronomical verses in Vedas, or the books which were written just after the Vedas, like Upanishads, and these books, they don't have Rashis, zodiac signs. Why they don't have? Because that time in India, in Vedic period, there was no concept of Rashi. Now, so how did Rashis come to India? We see the evidence of people starting to use Rashis only in Maurya period and later. Rashis were first defined in Babylon, which is West Asia. From Babylon, it got copied, it went to Greeks. And what happened just before the Maurya period? Alexander came to India. And Alexander did not just come with the army. He knew India had a lot of knowledge. And it would be great idea to learn that knowledge. So along with his army, lot of philosophers, teachers, they traveled to India. Which was common at that time, that since the army is doing this, they could travel with them. They came, they exchanged notes with Indian scholars. And after that, suddenly, Indians start talking about Rashis. what this says, earlier I mentioned birth charts. Now, if you have seen any birth charts, what they have is this 12 boxes for 12 rashis. If rashis itself is not an Indian concept, how can birth charts be Indian concept at all? And so this is the first thing. So people who say, oh no, people who oppose birth charts are they are anti-India. No, birth chart itself is not Indian. It was something which was invented outside. It is evidence, historical evidence that Greeks were already using something similar to birth charts and trying to predict futures of people. And Indians were not doing that at that time. But after Alexander's invasion, Indians also started doing that. Now, beyond that, if people ask, do birth charts actually make sense? And many times students ask me this question. I give you answer. I will not tell you what to believe or what not to believe. But think like this, you are in place of planet, let's say Jupiter. Jupiter is there in the space. Today in the evening, if you go out, you will see Jupiter in the sky. It is some billions of kilometers away. Okay. तो वहां पे जो जुपिटर है, वहां से अर्थ कितना दिखेगा? इतना एकदम छोटा सा दिखेगा. एक्चुअली अमेरिका के कुछ स्पेसक्राफ्ट जो जुपिटर के भी आगे गए, उन्होंने वहां से अर्थ का फोटो लिया. फोटो में भी अर्थ कितना दिखता है, एक डॉट. तो वो जो डॉट वहां से दिखेगा, वो डॉट के अंदर एक उससे भी छोटा डॉट होगा इंडिया. उसके अंदर और छोटा डॉट होगा, दैट इज आसाम. उसके अंदर और छोटा डॉट होगा, दैट इज गुवाहाटी. उसके अंदर और छोटा डॉट होगा, दैट इज दिस प्लेस. एंड नाउ यहाँ अबाउट 150 पीपल आर सिटिंग हियर. जुपिटर को क्या करना है, इसका बर्थ डेट क्या है, इसका बर्थ डेट क्या है, इसका बर्थ डेट क्या है, हर एक का चेक करके अलग अलग कोर्स उस पे एग्जैक्ट करना है. एंड कीप डूइंग दिस कंटिन्यूअसली. अगर ऐसे बोलते तो बच्चों को समझ में आ जाता है कि ये पूरा आइडिया जो है वही पूरा बकवास है. बट ये एक तरह से मतलब गिविंग थिंग लॉजिक क्यों सही नहीं है. फिर भी लोग पूछते हैं कि फिर भी आपके पास कुछ प्रूफ है क्या सही कि बर्थ चार्ट बच्चा से कुछ बर्थ चार्ट से कुछ होता नहीं है. तो उसके लिए भी स्टडीज काफी हुए हैं. इनफैक्ट पिछले 80-90 साल में ऑल ओवर वर्ल्ड 70 से 80 स्टडीज हुए हैं ये सब्जेक्ट. और हर एक स्टडी में यही दिखाया है कि बर्थ चार्ट होते नहीं है. सबसे फेमस अपने कॉन्टेक्स्ट में स्टडी है जो 2008 में पुणे में हुआ था, जिसमें प्रोफेसर नार्लिकर इन्वॉल्व थे, डॉक्टर नरेंद्र दाभोलकर इन्वॉल्व थे. उन्होंने क्या किया, बोला कि ठीक है, आप बोलते हैं कि बच्चों का फ्यूचर आप बर्थ चार्ट से बता सकते हो. तो उन्होंने 200 बर्थ चार्ट्स जमा किए. कैसे 200 बर्थ चार्ट जमा किए? पर्पसफुली 100 ऐसे चार्ट्स जहां पे वो बच्चे बहुत होशियार है. Schools agreed that they are very very good students doing very well academically, and so ऐसे चार्ट्स जहां पे बच्चों में कुछ तो कॉग्निटिव डिसेबिलिटी है, उनको रेगुलर स्कूल में जाना पॉसिबल भी नहीं है, उनको स्पेशल स्कूल में भेजना पड़ता है, ऐसे 100 बच्चे. So clearly very different rules. अगर आप बर्थ चार्ट से किसी का भविष्य बोल सकते हो, तो आपको ये तो बोलना चाहिए कि इसमें से कौन होशियार है और किसी को इसको स्कूल की जरूरत है। तो उसके बाद उन्होंने क्या किया, उनको पूरा मिक्स कर दिया। किसी को पता ना चले इसमें से कौन से वाले होशियार बच्चों के चार्ट हैं, कौन से वाले जो स्पेशल एजुकेशन वाले बच्चों के चार्ट। फिर उन्होंने बोला कि अभी इसको आना है, आ जाओ, हम उसमें से कोई भी 40 आपको निकाल के दे देंगे चार्ट्स। आपको सिर्फ ये बोलना है इसमें से होशियार बच्चे कौन से हैं, ठीक है। अभी सपोज मुझे एस्ट्रोलॉजी आता नहीं है, तो मुझे 40 चार्ट दे दिए, तो मैं क्या करूंगा, एक कॉइन हाथ में लूंगा, टॉस करूंगा। हेड्स अभी से होशियार होते हैं, टेल्स नहीं, ये होशियार नहीं है। ऐसे मैं 40 बार करूंगा। इफ यू डू दिस बाय स्टैटिस्टिक्स, 40 में से 20 जवाब आपके सही आ सकते हैं अप्रोक्सीमेटली। कभी 19 सही आएंगे, कभी 21 सही आएंगे अप्रोक्सीमेटली, बट अराउंड 20 के आसपास जवाब सही आएंगे, कुछ किए बगैर, सिर्फ तो कॉइन टॉस करके। तो जो स्टडी करने वाले दाराड़ी का ये लोगों ने ख्याल किया था कि अगर आपकी एस्ट्रोलॉजी सही है तो 40 में से कम आपके 28 सही आने चाहिए, 28 should be right, then we will accept that you are doing something better than chance. अगर 28 से कम है तो वो रैंडम चांस से हो सकता है। उस टाइम पे 27 अलग अलग एस्ट्रोलॉजर्स ने उनसे चार्ट्स लिए, एनालिसिस किया और कुछ रिजल्ट सबमिट किए। फिर उन्होंने लिस्ट निकाला, देखा कि किसके रिजल्ट कितने सही आ रहे हैं। 27 लोगों में से बेस्ट स्कोर 24 था और एवरेज स्कोर 19 था। और इस तरह के, सो ये एक स्टडी का एग्जांपल है, इस तरह के काफी सारे स्टडीज अलग अलग जगह पे हुए हैं। तो अगर कोई कहता है कि एस्ट्रोलॉजी को पहले आप स्टडी कीजिए, शायद वो सही हो सकता है, तो आप ये बोल सकते हो कि शायद का सवाल नहीं, क्योंकि ये ऑलरेडी ट्राई किया जा चुका है काफी बार और काफी स्टडीज में दिखाया जा चुका है कि एस्ट्रोलॉजी सही नहीं है। अभी साइंस हम कहते हैं, सब बच्चों को कहते हैं साइंस पढ़ो, साइंस पढ़ो। साइंस क्या है? साइंस मतलब डेफिनेशंस है कि इक्वेशंस, थियरम्स या सम डिस्क्रिप्शन ऑफ सम इंस्ट्रूमेंट, ये सब साइंस नहीं है। साइंस मतलब कैसे सोचा जाए, इसकी सीख है। आपके सामने क्या एविडेंस है, उसके हिसाब से आप क्या कंक्लूजन निकाल सकते हो और क्या कंक्लूजन पॉसिबल नहीं है। तो संस्कृत में इसको बोलते हैं काकतालीय योग, मतलब कौवा पेड़ पे बैठा और ब्रांच टूट गई, कौवे की वजह से टूटी या और पहले से वो टूटी हुई थी, कौवा कौवे ने थोड़ा टच किया तो वो टूट गई, आपको मालूम नहीं। आप डायरेक्टली बोल नहीं सकते कि कौवे ने ब्रांच तोड़ दी। सो आपके सामने दिया हुआ एविडेंस किस तरह से आपको प्रेजेंट कर दिया गया है, ये छोड़ के आप खुद का एनालिसिस करना सीखना चाहिए, which will tell you what kind conclusions you are allowed to make with this. अगर हम साइंस क्लासरूम में बच्चों को ये सिखा पाए कि इक्वेशंस या मेमोराइज करना और लॉज मेमोराइज करना बंद करो, कैसे सोचना है ये सीखो, that will be the big transformation our education system needs, and we hope all of us can help in working towards that. Thanks.